Hello, I'm Mark Hammett, minister of the Weber Road Church of Christ, and I welcome you to this daily devotional and Bible reading. I hope that you'll turn to Exodus chapter 1. Exodus chapter 1. We'll be reading from there in just a moment. While you look for that passage, I want to invite you to the Weber Road Church of Christ. The invitation is always extended, and if you live in our area especially, you may come in person. If you cannot be here physically, or if you live somewhere else, you're always welcome to join us on our stream on Facebook and YouTube, and also you may view our church website, and that's the Weber Road Church of Christ. We have Bible classes Sunday mornings at 9, worship at 10 at the present time, and then we also have our Wednesday night Bible classes for all ages at 7 p.m. I mentioned a short time ago that we have there's a book by Dave Miller. It's an excellent book called A Summary of the Bible. And I thought I'd go through some of these summaries of the different books of the Bible periodically. This one is on Exodus. You know, Exodus, the name actually means exit or departure, and it refers to the movement of the nation of Israel out of Egypt when they were in bondage, in slavery to the Egyptians, and as they moved toward the Promised Land. And here's the central theme, as Dave Miller writes. Deliverance or emancipation comes from the one and only God of the universe. We find that in the book of Exodus. He alone can achieve or release in this life from the confines that burden us, even today. This release frees us to serve Him in accordance with His revealed instructions. He alone is the solution and the antidote to life's hardships. Consider this. He's the way out. He's the exit, the avenue of escape from the problems of our life. Exodus, that book, depicts for us the birth of a nation. You have Israel's commencement as a national entity under God, a theocracy, as we would call it, with a law code to govern them in worship and in daily life. Thus, God is the God of revelation, because He reveals Himself to His people. And as we read Exodus, we can also find out so much about God as we can throughout the whole Bible, but particularly in the Old Testament. We find many of the wonderful characteristics of God. But He reveals Himself to people. He offers to direct their behavior. He reveals Himself as the one who controls history in chapter 1, whose name is I Am, the eternal present, chapter 3. He redeems, according to chapters 6 and 15. But He also judges His people. And we find that in chapters 4 and 20 and 32. And those outside Israel who reject Him, we find in chapters 7 through 12, He judges them also. And He keeps His covenant commitments, as we find in chapter 19. He lives among His people, as we find in chapter 29:45. And we also know that He is a great and awesome God, as revealed in the book of Exodus. What I'd like to do for this devotional is read a little bit from Exodus chapter 1. Exodus chapter 1 from the English Standard Versions, and you can follow me in your own Bible or just listen as I read. He mentions, "These are the names of the sons of Israel who came to Egypt with Jacob, each with his household: Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, Issachar, Zebulun, and Benjamin, Dan and Naphtali, Gad and Asher. All the descendants of Jacob were 70 persons. Joseph was already in Egypt, though Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation." Then Joseph died, and all his brothers and all that generation. "But the people of Israel were fruitful and increased greatly. They multiplied and grew exceedingly strong, so that the land was filled with them." In verse 8, "Now there arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. And he said to his people," and let me stop there, how important it is to know our history even today, isn't it? Because this king obviously was the ruler of Egypt. He had forgotten what Joseph had done for Egypt. It says, "And he said to his people, Behold, the people of Israel are too many and too mighty for us. Come, let us deal shrewdly with them, lest they multiply. And if war breaks out, they join our enemies and fight against us and escape from the land. Therefore he set out taskmasters over them to afflict them with heavy burdens. They built for Pharaoh store cities, Pithom and Ramses. But the more that they were oppressed, the more they multiplied, and the more they spread abroad. And the Egyptians were in dread of the people of Israel. And so they ruthlessly made the people of Israel work as slaves, and made their lives bitter with hard service, in mortar and brick, and in all kinds of work in the field. In all their work, they ruthlessly made them work as slaves. Verse 15, Then the king of Egypt said to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shiphrah, and the other was Puah, when you serve as midwife to the Hebrew women and see them on the birth stool, if it is a son, you shall kill him. But if it's a daughter, she shall live. But the midwives feared God, and did not do as the king of Egypt commanded them, but let the male children live. So the king of Egypt called the midwives and said to them, Why have you done this, and let the male children live? The midwives said to Pharaoh, Because the Hebrew women are not like the Egyptian women, for they are vigorous and give birth before the midwives come to them. So God dealt well with the midwives, and the people multiplied and grew very strong. And because the midwives feared God, he gave them families. Then Pharaoh commanded all his people, Every son that is born to the Hebrews you shall cast into the Nile, but you shall let every daughter live. Again, that's chapter 1 of Exodus, and it sets up the rest of the book. And I hope that you'll continue to read in Exodus, and it's always good that you're able to join us for our daily devotionals and Bible readings. You can go back to our Facebook page or YouTube, my personal YouTube channel, and then we also have posted some of these on our website. And we encourage you to continue to read God's Word, apply it, follow it every day of your life, and remember to pray to God. And may the Lord bless you richly as you seek to follow His will.